Hello, Blake Bruning here from Trinity Whip Company, and what we're going to be discussing today is more for a whip making point of view, but you whip crackers enjoy it as well. Now, we're going to talk more about the internals, and that's what the agenda is, but let's go ahead and look at a couple different whips. This is a pretty common standard Indy design bullwhip. This one's in saddle tan, but this is an Indy style. Now, when it talks about internal construction or how you make it, people get confused with why 2 belly versus 3 belly and other stuff, and that really comes down to the method of the maker. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But with this, to do an Indy style, and when people try to say they do an Indy style, there's certain things you expect to see from an Indy. Of course, the bulbous knot, the 5-4 double or triple, the 5-4 double, wrist loop, things like that. There's different things you're looking for. You want to know it's a nail spike, not spring steel. Now, people will make a spring steel version and then say it's an Indy style. But, if you're really trying to have what they would make the Indy style, you have to employ the Indy style methods. And with that, when you have braided bellies, and we'll show and discuss in a minute that, there's usually a yoke. You would make these with a yoke. So it's a flat piece and then 4 strands. That flat piece turns into 4 strands, and then that's where the belly braid begins, and it begins right wherever you want the handle flare to start beginning. And so on the Indy, it's up here a little bit under the transition knot, depending on the model, it varies. And with this is about where the yokes stop and the strands shot out. And so now the strands, when you interweave and braid, there's a strand over a strand, so it causes it to thicken up. So just by naturally making a yoke and having the 4 strand, you get this increase. And just so you guys can see what I'm talking about, this handle should be about 2 millimeters, give or take, slimmer than the handle. And let's look at it real quick. So like right there, it's at about 21 millimeters. Now I'm going to go just under the transition. Looks like we're around 23. And just over the transition, it's still around 23, 24, 23.5, 24. So right in here is where the bellies kind of open up. Now this is a target bullwhip. And now target bullwhips have a different construction. Now this one also features a double belly, 4-strand belly in the internal construction. But you have to do other things so that you can allow the diameter to stay even, all the way throughout. So there's about 24 millimeters, or 20 millimeters, 20.4 is what I meant, to another 20. It's all around 20 millimeters, give or take, 20 millimeters. And so this handle is just one straight shot. So again, from just looking at a whip that's a target bullwhip versus an Indy style, you can see the target is usually considered to have a straight or even diameter. Some people like to have it fatter here and have it taper down with the whip, and they believe that'll also help with the design of it flowing out. But either way, this is pretty common on a target style bullwhip. Well, like I said, the Indy will have the flare, thus a thinner handle compared to the transition area. So what we have now is we have some unfinished whips. This is a 6-foot target whip with a 12-inch handle. And as you can see, the overlay is ready for both of them, basically. I'll do some other things, but the next layer that would go over this bolster would be the overlay. So with this, you can see everything is smooth and straight, and there's no flare out, right? We'll pull that in. As you can see, that like we showed in the earlier target whip, it'll be a straight flare out from there. Now this is its second belly already braided, and so if we come down to the end, and we'll see it more in the other one, you can see that there are some strands, a little small strand or two sticking out, and that is some of the first belly tails, wherever they're located out on. And then what we'll have is a little bit of the first bolster sticking out. Now the rest of these that are coming off these are the belly tails for the second belly, and so it covers everything. And then the bolster will cover all that. So there's a core in the middle, which is a piece of leather, then the first belly braid, then, there's a first bolster, there's another belly, and then there's the second bolster, and then there comes the overlay. And so once again, I'm not really trying to get into teaching how to make whips or what's going on here, but we're going to go ahead and look at this one. So this one is more of an Indy style. Now, hopefully you can see it. It's kind of hard to hold the camera to it, but you'll see there's a flare out right there. All right, so as the handle goes, you can see where the flare out is beginning, right here. Okay, and so if we look under there, all right, so turn this over real quick. So you can see that this is where the bellies started to braid. And so it flares out there while this is a little smaller. And to give you some calipers might help you to see. So like, there's 15.5 millimeters, and then above that, there's about 18 millimeters. So there's about 2.5 millimeters difference. Now the second bolster going over it will simply add the same diameter here as it here as it thickens, and then it's ready for the overlay, but you'll see how it will create that Indy flare. Now this is actually not fully constructed. I'm going to have to take this off and redo some things, but I just wanted to kind of show and see if you can see the internal construction. So this is a little bit of kip right here, or also known as cowhide, but this is actual kip. And with this kip, this is the core that the nail spike was attached to. And then I had my first belly yoke put on at the handle, you know, and I started around here, and that's where the belly braid started. So now we've got, what you'll see left of is the first core, or the core. These whiskey, and so you can see it, these are actually the belly tails left from my first belly that was braided. And so now we're going to have that to be filler, and I'll taper those accordingly. And now this is the first bolster that went over the braided belly, and now it's with the belly tails and some of the core that's running the length. And now here's the second belly. So you're seeing the second belly starting the braid around the first belly, wherever you desire. And that is now a double belly 4-strand whip. Everything is just a 4-strand whip, all right? A nice 4-strand whip. Now, I would, of course, continue braiding, but I just want you guys to kind of see that. So this is the average layers of a whip. So core, braided over by the first belly, all right? And then you have the first bolster that covers the first braided belly, kind of also creates a nice fresh canvas and fills in the cracks well and just bolsters the whip. The second belly braiding over everything we've braided so far, and now the overlay, the second overlay. And of course, I'll do other things, and I'm gonna have to take this off to, you know, of course, finish this, but I just brought it out so you could see basically what the inside of a bullwhip works with. Now, there's a couple different methods, and I'm really just trying to explain what you're looking for and what makes an Indy bullwhip. All right, and this flare, I would say, is definitely a big one because it just plays so simple, but this is how you construct an Indy bullwhip. You need a yoke and then the braiding. So a lot of people, when they make different leather whips or nylon whips, what they do, instead of being able to have a yoke that flares, not that some don't, some will do these, some will still yoke and do different methods, but if nylon, usually you don't have a yoke, so you lash everything down and you braid over everything. So when you stop braiding, for one thing, the end of the braiding, there will not be a flare out like there would be with a yoke method. And so leather, when you take leather the same way and you just lash it on and now braid over everything, it'll do the same thing. There will not be a flare out. You know, a lot of people say this is their Indy style whip, and that's great. They have their own Indy style. And, you know, if the flare doesn't bother you or whatever, that's okay. Some people have been making Indy styles for years, and they have small heel knots or rounded heel knots or thinner whips. I mean, each maker will do things their own way. So I'm not here, again, trying to insult anyone or anyone's technique. I'm just kind of sharing the understanding of it, okay? So once again, going back, so if a leather braider did it like a nylon, you would not see that flare out. And people will do that, and they'll put the same knots on it, make it out natural, call it Indy. That's fine. All right, it's no big deal. I'm not insulting them. I'm just saying, you know, that's if you see that flare out, that also let you know how the internal construction is made. But there's also other things by internals, and I kind of want to discuss what it is to have multiple bellies. So we're going to touch that in a quick second, still going into what's pertinent for the Indy whip. So let's look out at what is usually made with leather whips. You know, I've used a lot of different things for handles, but this is a nail spike. All right, this is an 8-inch nail spike. This one right here is what's commonly called a piece of spring steel. Now the spring steel is thinner than the nail spike. You know, by far, so what we got like, oh, let's go ahead and make sure we set those, all right? Guess it is that thin. This one might be a thinner stock I have, but it looks like it's about 7 millimeters, while the nail spike is about, 9.5 millimeters. So with this, already, if you were to make a whip and there's certain diameters or, things you want to hit for the handle, well, this already starts, 2.5 millimeters thinner. So if you were trying to use this, for one thing, it's heavier, and even though this is longer because it's thinner, this one's more of a, I'd say, a 10-inch spike. This one is probably still just slightly lighter than that one, or close to being lighter than that one. And so that's why if you're making like a 12-inch target whip, you would rather have spring steel, because if you had a 12-inch spike, it would be a massive beast. It would be very heavy, unless that's what you want. And also because it starts thicker, it can end up thicker very easy unless you do some severe splitting. So this is also nice when you want to make thinner whips. There's a lot of ways to construct whips, a lot of ways to construct the inside. Doesn't make it inferior whip. There's a lot of ways to kind of slim down diameter. But just let's say we didn't do any special splitting for any project, this will always make a whip that's 2 millimeters or 2 to 3 millimeters thinner than that one. All right, so that plays a part, and also just overall diameter. Now, with it being the Indy Whip and having this, all right, see a lot of people, or if you'll notice, just by putting, let's say I don't split anything, and I don't really, I just let the canvas work. So with this, as it starts out 9.5, all right, on the handle, let's just say every layer under it is about 1 millimeter. It fluctuates, and you can split it, but if everything's about 1 millimeter, all right, you got to realize, so I have a core, that adds 2 millimeters, all right? So then I have a yoke from the first belly, let's say yoke from the second belly, and like every time you do that adds 2 millimeters. So we're looking at 6 millimeters now plus 9. We're looking at or 9.5, we'll just say 10, so it's easy. So we're looking at 16 millimeters. And now the bolster is going to add another 2 for the second bolster. You don't worry about the first bolster right now, but so that's 18 millimeters. So now 18 millimeters, and we're going to get an overlay that's going to be easily 4. So 18 and 4 is 22. But I didn't mention the first bolster, but we'll talk about that. So if everything was magically a millimeter, everything worked out, we're looking at 22 millimeters, but really it's more like 24, especially having the first bolster and other things you do. And you got to realize what I didn't add was right here. So the handle itself will be thin. It'll be yoke, bolster, second bolster, overlay. So that's 6 and 4, that's 10 plus 9. You're looking at about a 20 millimeter handle. But you see over here, we still have the same thing. We have core. We don't have a yoke though. We have braided belly. So instead of 2, you have 4 millimeters. So braided belly, that's 8. Core, that's 2, that's 10. And then let's just say you have your second bolster, that's 2 more, that's 12, and another 2 for the first bolster, so that's 14. 14 plus 10 is 24 millimeters. That's why your average 2-belly construction should have about 24 millimeters, give or take. I mean, you don't always get things in a millimeter, still thicker, a little thinner, things like that, unless you split or appropriate. And then this is always going to be about 20. While on this right here, then if you don't know anything, let's just say you use a core and a double belly method. So let's say, and we'll go ahead and, like I said, we fill in the bottom material on it to help smooth it out. But let's just look at this, and don't worry about the handle. We'll just say up around here then. So we have core, that's 2 millimeters. We have first and second bolster, that's 6 total, 2 millimeters for each layer. We have braided sections, so we have 2 braided belly section, that becomes 4, and 4 and 4 instead of 2 and 2. So we have 8 on the braided. We have a core, which is 2. All right, so that's 8 and 2, that's 10. All right, now we've got the first bolster, that's 2 more, that's 12. We have the second bolster, that's 2 more, that's 14. And now the overlay, which is 4. The overlay, which is 4, is about, 18, give or take. So around, I think I missed something in there. But anyway, so wherever we're at in there, I got to double check that. Actually, I need to take off 2 millimeters. But with that, it'll come to where everything's about 20 millimeters, or 22 millimeters. So this fat part will be 22, where this fat part, will be more like 24. It's common to have 22 here. I splitted this a lot and did other things to make this come with the 20, but like normally this would be about 22. If you did nothing, this would be 24, 25. All right, so that's kind of the difference on just because of the handle and how you use it, how it's going to affect things. And we're still talking about yoke and belly braid. All right, we'll come right back to another point that's pertinent as far as multiple bellies. So again, we just talked about the diameter being more like 20 on a handle and 24 right here if you don't split. And then this, I fill up this area in a way so that whatever the thickest part is, everything thins out. And this is common to be 22 millimeters. Talked about how this handle's thicker than this by about 2.5 millimeters, give or take, which adds, and we talked about having the yoke method and then the bellies spread out. So when people talk about it's a double belly or triple belly, what they mean is, an overlay is just like the wrapping present or the wrapping paper on a present. You have to have the present underneath, and then the wrapping goes on top. And, well, of course, overlay does more than just as a wrapping paper. But with this, with all these internal instructions, like I showed you earlier, like this is a double belly whip. Now, you got to realize, whatever your core does, whatever you put in here, if I made a core this fat, well, whatever my next layer is, has to be that fat. So the core and the heart becomes something you need to work hard at, but as you make your core, everything else just bolsters above it. So whatever this shape takes, the next layers will take that shape and go a little past it and a little past it. So you can do a lot here. Like this is just, the methods I used here on these, but you can do a lot. If I really was going to try triple belly, I probably wouldn't let them run as long as 2 bellies. I personally see there's no reason for triple bellies. I don't see the point of it. Then again, there's other methods where they use triple bellies, but it's not really needed. And a lot of times, like I said, if they're trying to recreate an Indy, but they're trying to use this, that triple belly could help them because it will fatten this up a little bit more. So in a sense, a triple belly could help the spring steel world where people just braid straight, but then again, some people might use, nail spikes when they use the other method, where it's just leather strand method. But with this, So if you had a third belly, and let's just say that we talked on another video, if you look, that the overall shape of a bullwhip is that I want it to taper a little faster around the quarter mark and then slow the rest of it down. So even if you did do a good job getting the right initial shape of it, so then the rest would slow down, okay? And like I said, this is still unbraided. Well, if I put one layer on it, and then the next layer is going to thicken that. So if I had another belly, like I said, every belly braid, as strands top each other, unless you really split them down, let's say no splitting, every braided section is 2 millimeters on each side of width. So it's a 4 meter increase of diameter. So if you were to do a third belly, all right, and say you bolstered everything, but you did a third belly, now you're going to have 4 more millimeters. This 24, if it was on a nail spike, it would easily be 28. Or this one right here being 22 would now be 26 millimeters. And first of all, it can make a very massive and thick whip. Some people like that. You can make a massive and thick whip too, and don't add another belly. So once again, there's a lot of methods. I'm not really insulting methods. I'm just explaining some. And so if I did a triple belly though, let's just say, and this is where I think there's a problem with these triple bellies. Now, a lot of reason, the people that make these whips, they don't make 4-plat yokes and they don't taper them as a 4-plat yoke or a 4-plat belly. What they do instead is they, like I said, like nylon, they have a smaller layer and you can't adjust the nylon. And a lot of these people do some adjustment with their lace, but they'll start with a slim lace, like 6 millimeters, because it's very close to nylon. So your first belly is a 6-strand. It can't be a 4-strand because you started with a smaller diameter instead of like me with a thicker diameter. And now their second belly, well, because it's thicker and they're still using a certain millimeter, like 6 millimeters as a strand, they now have to go to like an 8-strand. Second belly. All right. And so now, or they have 8 strands that are all 6 millimeters to help cover as it gets thicker. And then it's going to have to be like a 10-strand or a 12-strand. And they do the same thing with their overlays. So that's why you see a lot more of these 16-strand leather bullwhips being made, just because as they thicken it and they're always doing everything at a certain start at 6 millimeter, it kind of forces certain things to have to be common in their construction. But now here's the problem again. With the triple belly method, first of all, like I said, everything bolsters. So even if I decided to make the first belly end here to help fix the diameter, that every other layer, there's 4 more millimeters. So this third one, wherever it goes, it's going, even if I did slim it down, it's still going to make a whip very, very thong heavy and have more weight, travel farther down. Not only more weight because there's more leather and more diameter, but because there's a third braided belly, it allows more weight down the whip and can create a very thong heavy whip, a very thong heavy whip. And so when people talk about having triple bellies or especially quadruple bellies, you got to realize that that's a thick, very thick whip. And it would be very hard, although you could do it. It'd be harder for you to keep the diameter down and have all these bellies and not make it thong heavy. Then again, some people might like that thong heavy. Maybe they're used to it and they like it. But a fourth belly especially, it would really, it would not flow very well. And you got to realize that, and Casey Tyler is known for calling things dead spots, but where a belly braid ends, all right, and then it turns into strands, even though nothing's changed here, it's a little thinner right there, okay? And that's just because this was a nice tight circle and then it kind of folded in. And, as a whip maker, you're appropriate for that. But a lot of people don't, and, they just don't understand it very well. So let's just say we had 3 of these, and this was the full length of, the underside. So every time we have a hard layer and a soft, so we have a hard layer, a soft layer, then the second belly goes over it, so it braids hard, and then it braids over the soft, but then it has soft, and then we braid over again. So every time you do that, in a sense, you have a stopping point where it kind of affects it. Casey called these dead spots or dead zones. Like if they don't work right and you roll out, or if you roll out a whip, he could probably feel and see it. But he'd say, I could feel and see where the belly's in because of what he calls the dead spot. I don't really think, it's really that easy to see in a good make whip. You can't. But this does kind of affect how the inside work because of what's braided over, and then what's braided over. So to have 3 of these spots, once again, you're going to have a thicker overall diameter, but it also has more of these ending points, which could cause more bumps as well. So, because some people have a hard time going from here, affecting it. And it may not be a bump. What they might have instead is a divot, so you kind of see the bump after the divot or the bump before the divot and things like that. So trying to make things as smooth as possible, once again, having multiple strands can be an issue. Now, having a 4-strand belly, again, I can taper everything to my desired shape and braid it up. It ends on 4. As things go by, most of the time, unless I'm wrong with the way, a lot of people do like the Bruning method from YouTube. And, with that, then they use a 6-strand belly or an 8-strand. And by the third one, they're using like a 10 or 12 strand. So they have to braid, but they also have to start dropping strands because as this slims, they have to drop a strand in the braiding, drop a strand in the braiding. And what that can cause is where you'll see more bumps down on just this first layer. And then the second layer, you're going to have those bumps, but you're going to have all the other belly strands where they drop. So they have to figure out how to drop their strands without bumps just in the underlayer, and that can cause another smooth problem. So I hope all this has made sense. Please feel free to message me or YouTube me or whatever if you got any questions about it. Again, for final disclosure, I am not insulting anyone's method. I'm not trying to pick out one method or the other. I'm not trying to exalt myself. I'm just trying to explain so people understand what generally is what considered a target whip, but more importantly, what generally makes an Indy whip is the whole feature, and trying to understand how the internals work and understanding what a yoke with a 4-strand belly method is. And before you go, I'll tell you what, we'll keep focused right on there, and I'll drop an example out right here. So like, here's an example of a yoke with 4 strands, and then this braids the belly. My name is Blake Bruning from Trinity Whip Company. I hope this helps a lot of you. I hope this helps you guys think about method, or hopefully if there's something here you learned, whether it's you've picked up some tips to help you, or you just, maybe you've seen something that you think's a little nutty and not for you, and that's okay too. But if it's worth something to you and it helps you out, man, please just drop a comment and let me know. God bless. Have a good day.